Well, welcome to the session, and in this session we're going to look at a bit of a loathed issue, one issue that people don't want to talk about, don't want to exhaust anymore, but I think it's important for us to learn a few things. And that is our response for believers to the COVID and monkeypox and other pestilences that are around. I believe we must stay informed and learn lessons. Now, I'm not talking as a physician or a doctor or a specialist or anything, but just a student of health science and the follower of many top related physicians. And they are in my links and on my YouTube channel where I share them to my Twitter feed and so on when they give us helpful information about what's going on and staying up to date to it. And we don't like this subject. And if anybody doesn't want to continue with the subject, they do not have to continue, okay? So at this stage in time, one thing I was just thinking is that we should have learned now something. All of this should boil down to a conclusion. And I believe it's summed up very simply, that when we are sick, we must stay home and isolate. I hope everyone can basically agree to that. When you are symptomatic, when you know you have a viral illness, when you just can feel it, you can feel you're down and out, immediately take steps to isolate and quarantine yourself. We know how transmissible the virus is in social settings. So there's really no reason for us to go out in those settings when we are sick. I point out we must not spread it to others, even if we ourselves have calculated that we're okay with it. We're okay getting infected repeatedly, multiple times a year, and that we want to live with it without due care or concern. And so if that's our position, we really need to look out for other people. So I believe if everyone who is sick quarantined, if everybody who is symptomatic would quarantine, stay home until they know they've cleared the virus, we could defeat the virus, and the virus will not be able to find new hosts and really burn itself out. But every time we accommodate it, it mutates and spreads, which helps the virus survive, get more fit, helping it evade vaccines and immunity. That's another thing we learned. The idea of herd immunity is something that has been kind of thrown out the window with these latest variants, and people getting as sick as they've ever been, even though they've had it 2 times, 3 times, even more than that. So that is what we have learned thus far at this stage in time. We take the case study from a church in Ohio, and I just point this out to show you what it's like when one person goes to church symptomatic. This is how it spreads, say with the latest variant that we know defeats vaccines and immunity. Well, what happens? Well, here you go. A 56-year-old man was the initial case they traced back to a church service in Ohio County. And as of following that service, 91 additional people from 5 counties developed symptoms of COVID-19. And the graphic illustrates just a taste of how a spread can happen, a super spreading event. So this man, for whatever reason, chose to attend church despite being symptomatic, despite all the news of COVID. And I would just ask a simple question: why? Why did he do that? Did he really believe he was that important to go to church at that time? That the church couldn't live without him? The church couldn't function without him being there? Did he really think he was that big? And we need to ask ourselves the question, as Christians who follow the Lord Jesus, who are acquainted with the Old Testament and the practices for people with leprosy and other things that the Bible says about disease, right? Is spreading illness knowingly or out of ignorance God's will for the church? Is it God's will for us to spread illness? That's a question, a very basic one we should ask ourselves as Christians. I believe absolutely not. We should do everything we can to protect our neighbor and so on. We've heard of a case of a younger lady going out to a event outdoors, and the people that she was going with, one of them was not feeling well, decided to go on the trip anyways, and she was desperately trying to avoid it as an immunocompromised individual, and she got it, and is sick to this day, trying to get over it, even whilst fully vaccinated. They proceeded to go with the plan anyways, and as we'll see here, what we need to do is not look out for just ourselves. Okay, I worry about the generation we're living in, where it's like they just live for good times. Let's plan good times, and nothing's gonna stop us from getting out there and enjoying ourselves and having a great old time. Well, those plans may be canceled. If you're sick, you should cancel it. You should have the courtesy and the moral obligation to be able to cancel a plan if you're sick and you know you're going to spread it to somebody who may not want it. As I said, who wants to get sick with a flu and congestion and sinus infections and bronchitis and all kinds of other secondary infections that can happen with this virus, including long COVID risks? So we must be educated and wise on these things, right? On these healthcare issues, and do what we can, right? We can't do everything, but we must try our best. Some people are in work environments where avoiding it and wearing a mask all day is like really difficult or impossible. We have to look out for people like that by not causing super spreading events in the community. So isolating while sick, canceling get-togethers, dinners out, parties, social events may be difficult. It is, but it's not in vain. You won't be the wrong one in that situation. Where you're really going to get into trouble is if a bunch of people who really were trying to avoid COVID find out and narrow it down that you're the one that gave it to them during a time that you were attending an event. So the world and the church will go on without you, okay? Like, and me, for that matter. We don't need to go to that social function to prove a point or to be there. Your attendance while sick is not necessary. Just a little bit about monkeypox. I've studied this one. This has to be one of the most disgusting illnesses I have studied in my health science in terms of how it affects human anatomy and so on. We know that most cases were in the homosexual community, but my doctor, Daniel Griffin, who I follow at a study for virology, says that it is not a homosexual disease, but an infectious disease for everybody. You can see him at TWIV. Even as those in the horrific sin of homosexuality have acted as what I look at it like a detonator to cause the case clusters and explosions of spread in the community. It used to be 99.9% were homosexuals. Now it's crept down to 95%. And we're going to see that number continue to go down to into the 80s and so on. I see it as a slow but brutally steady and fit disease, which, unlike COVID, can remain active on textiles, blankets, surfaces for a very long time. You don't have to dig far into history to learn about the pox family and understand the smallpox epidemic and pandemic that happened in history. The study from, I believe it was the Lancet journal, cited a doctor who caught the contagion with full PPE on in a hospital setting when he was dealing with monkeypox patients. So I would ask the cavalier Christians who are going about and unmasked or in churches and saying everything's okay, would you welcome a guest with monkeypox lesions on their body into your church as well? Right? There has to, where do you draw the line? Right? There has to be some kind of order about what to do when you're sick. Okay, one thing we know that you do is don't spread it around to other people. Otherwise, we are causing needless pain and suffering to those people who are going to get afflicted with this disgusting illness that can be very, very hazardous and dangerous for children. So, conclusions. Churches and workplaces must adopt protocols that infected individuals must not attend where they could spread it to others. Very, very basic. Okay. I add, we don't need the government to tell us this. We don't need mandates, right? We don't need police enforcement clauses with this stuff. This is a common grace, a common decency and golden rule that we all must adhere to for moral reasons, right? We're under God, ultimately, and we are going to be judged by Him, ultimately. And so I believe we need to do this just for moral reasons, okay? I say if churchgoers insist, you're not going to stop me. I got to come to church. This is, I get saved by coming to church, If they insist on going there, spreading illness knowingly in or out of ignorance, maybe they've done no research on this at all, they should be warned and disciplined by the elders. I believe it's a church discipline issue. Elders and or removed from the fellowship, right? Don't come there. We don't want you here spreading illness to the masses, okay? That's how seriously I believe we take it. These pestilences seem here to stay, and we therefore must act and adapt our behavior with it if we want to protect ourselves and the health that God has granted us and to others. It's a tough subject, I know. Statistics point that out. Polling has pointed that out, that it's way back on the list of priorities for people, even in the United States, as there are many, many cases still going on and death still happening all over the place from it. But we as Christians are not scared to deal with it or learn about it, but we are ready to deal with it responsibly, using the brains that God has given us to wisely make decisions and judgments as we walk with Christ and continue praying in the Spirit. No, I don't have all the answers to it. Some of these issues are so cut and dry. Some of them have much ambiguity about it. But one thing we got to keep in mind is we have to love one another. We have to love our neighbor. And I could never, ever go out willingly and spread my illness to other people. And I would just add, I didn't do that even before COVID came out. When there was bad flus or influenzas circulating our community, or even a cold, I would not go to church. We'd all stay home as a family and not go there. Oh, where were you? Well, we were sick. Oh, okay. I did that even before the COVID pandemic hit. Out of common courtesy, we don't go. I probably caught the cold there at the church, right? But I don't go back there and continue to spread it. Many people went there, and Sunday school kids went to church sick in Sunday school class and gave us the flus, which were some cases really, really bad, where it caused us to be sick for weeks. There we have it. I believe it's cooking, simmering wrath of God, these pestilences. I believe they are very deadly serious. I believe we need to keep praying. I believe it's a foreshadowing, perhaps, of things much worse to come. And we need to take leadership and do what is right. Love one another, right? Sacrifice. I can't go to that because, you know what? One of us in the house is infected with something, is throwing up, and has a very sore, congested throat right now with a high fever. We're all isolating as a result of that, out of precaution, because we don't want to spread it to all the elderly folks at the church or the young toddlers and babies at the Sunday school class. It seems like common sense, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen people sick coming to church and their children. Stop it. We got to get by this. We got to grow up. And then everybody can just rejoice and be happy. We can shed our masks in the church, and we realize, there's nobody in this crowd right now, in this assembly, that has symptoms of an illness and are actively spreading it to us when they talk in our faces or when they shake our hands in the foyer. So thanks for listening. God bless us all, and may God bless those who are sick and our wonderful healthcare workers. We thank and pray that God will bless you.